when this table cracked, I thought that was the end of my career. And thankfully, this was years ago. Like my knee jerk was just to hang it up. So if you want, learn from me so you don't have those crisis moments where you're like, should I be doing this? So this was one of my first farmhouse tables that I added a breadboard to. So you can see they're all about 5-inch pine planks. And this one snuck in with a little bit too much moisture. Sorry, this one. And I missed it. And this is before I knew a whole lot about wood movement. I mean, I knew it. This was my first hands-on real life experience. I'm really glad it happened now. But in the moment, it was the end of the world, man. When you're going to add a breadboard, I glued all these together to make my panel. And I actually cragged and glued them, so it's pretty rock solid. A little bit of overkill. But what happens, let's say this board is expanding seasonally. That means all these boards are expanding. So if we start in the middle and we expand, and then these expand, and these expand, I've seen panels move, 5/8 of an inch, 1/2 inch seasonally, which is crazy. So picture all that pressure pushing outwards, and you put a breadboard this way that's rock solid, like locked tight right here. And there's nowhere for that pressure to release. So pressure, pressure, pressure. And then I got to this one that was a little bit too wet. Lots of moisture, lots of movement, and it just went, it didn't do that. It actually started with a small crack, and I went to the client to see if I could fill it and fix it. And then a week later it did this. And then we've had it in our house. It's fun to keep your epic fails as your dining room table, but we've had it now for a long time, and the cracks just completed itself. It's interesting because it continues to move seasonally, and this board is lock solid that none of these other boards have cracked. So you can potentially get away with it. It's just one of them most likely is gonna, there's maybe what happened was these expand now and contract, but because this crack is here, it allows enough of that movement. That makes sense. So this was a really expensive lesson in wood movement for us, because obviously the client returned the table, paid the refund. So really expensive lesson, but we tried to look at it more like I went to university and learned, paid for a class. There's a ton of videos out there. Maybe I'll do one on how to do a breadboard loose tenon, but it made me buy this baby right here. This is a Festool domino. I use this a lot for a lot of different things, but I bought it for the breadboard application. So that's the beast right there. Let me give you, I'm not going to show you how it all works, but just give you a quick what happens. This is a tight tenon. This is a loose tenon. You have all kinds of different size dominoes, but you can see that the tight tenon, there's no room. Like it is tight. But if you look at the loose tenon, look at how much movement. Like there's just so much, not a ton, but enough movement. The idea with this is instead of gluing and cragging this in solid, you do a tight tenon domino in the middle. This doesn't need anywhere to go. And then as you go out, you do loose tenon. So what that allows for is as these expand, so if this was a tight tenon, boom, crack. Because it's a loose tenon, it has, and it's not this dramatic, but it can move with the wood. On the loose tenons, when you're done at the bottom, you would drill a hole through and put a plug in there, and then that just allows the pivot, the move. But there's tons of videos out there, and again, maybe I'll do one, but that's the nuts and bolts of the domino loose tenon joinery. I did have one other table. I did a 12-foot conference table out of cedar, and this was a huge, heavy table. And I wasn't there for it, but the owner of the company, she was great, had me come in and look, but it sounded like a shotgun going off in the warehouse, they said. as that pressure just built up, boom, it had to have somewhere to go. And that's what happened. That was before I knew about loose tenon joinery. There's a quote that's along the lines of, if you know someone who's never failed at anything, they've never done anything. Like, you're gonna fail. And that's hard as a woodworker, a perfectionist. We sold our dining room table, and I had this in the studio, and my wife wanted a table, and I didn't have time to make it. And this is embarrassing how many years ago it was. But she said, well, let's use, and it was fresh. It was hard for me to see this fail, but it keeps you humble. We've used it as a family table. And you know what's super awesome about it is when we're crafting and somebody, paints or scratches, I don't care. But the warehouse table that cracked, we rebuilt that one too with some, lesson learned. We built it the right way the second time. But the first one, huge panel of cedar, and I made my wife a ginormous swinging bench that I engineered some pull-outs, and it was hinged so it would fold out into a swinging bed. Again, in the moment, quits, this sucks. It's like death. But to be able to repurpose it and put a smile on my wife's face, priceless, It was another thank you again, table for cracking. I want to build an heirloom table for my wife when she flips out and just can't believe what she's looking at. That's the kind of table I want to build for her. But I call it an heirloom table because I hope the girls will want it. They'll have all those memories. I don't even know how they'll upcycle it or what the style will be. We've had this gentle reminder of failure in the house for a long time. And we, over the years, man, you can find a trinket from every holiday. There was a little gingerbread Christmas light. We found some money in here. I mean, this gap, thankfully, it falls all the way through. But for now, I'm going to take some ebony Timbermate and just fill it in so we quit having all this garbage in there. Love Timbermate. I could use their Tinnable and mix in some dark walnut and blend it, but this is the Misfit table. And honestly, I kind of like seeing the crack to remind me of how much I've learned. So all you do, and because I'm not going to be able to sand this smooth, what I'm going to do is just roughly, just kind of putty knife it smooth. And then I'll scrape the excess on the sides. But then I'm just going to take a paper towel, kind of smooth it out, a wet paper towel. And I'll go down it, like just lightly smooth it out at the end, but getting the black off. All right, here's how Daddy holds it. My thumb down like that, and then finger, so like fingerprint. Different pressures pushing down, that'll get less material. You don't want to do the sides. What I do, scoop up about a 1/2 inch dollop like that. And when I'm starting to fill the crack, sometimes I'll go sideways just to really get it in there. And then once it's full, you can just kind of clean it up. Bada boom, bada bing. You smell that, kid? What's it smell like? Dental antiseptic? Because that's what it is. That's what they use to preserve it. And you know what? If this whole jar dried out, apparently I could just add water and reconstitute it, which means remix it, and it would look just like this. I've actually done that before.
Was that hard for you?
To work?
No, to not do it yourself?
Oh, totally. Yes, 100%. I have an idea in my head. I want to build my wife like the table, like the ones that our girls will want when we're 90. No, when we're dead.